Welcome in Kiev, welcome in Ukraine, sir. It's a pleasure to have you in our studio. We are MedPlus, a company that has a lot of activities in ecology, in healthcare, in nutrition, in waste recycling. And we have several questions. It would be a pleasure to have your ideas about that. Tell us, please, when you were co-chair in AAPG, what were your biggest achievements? Anything that we can use here?
Okay. So, firstly, thank you for your welcome, and it's great. I think it's a fantastic studios. The All Party Parliamentary Group for Agriculture, which was a group of parliamentarians from all different parties, I think the sorts of things that we have been focusing on are, firstly, how can you use less water for food production? I mean, in many parts of the world, water is becoming a really important commodity. I mean, a fought-over commodity. China is even diverting some of its rivers. They no longer go into Uzbekistan. So Uzbekistan has less water for cotton, and there are even talk of water wars. Okay, so how one uses less water for food production is really important. Hydroponics. Then I think we have been focusing a lot on how do you better store food, because tragically a lot of food around the world goes to waste. I mean, the amount of food, for example, that's produced in Africa that actually just gets wasted because it's not properly stored is really tragic. And so we've been trying to do a lot more work on food storage. And then distribution. How do you get food from where it's grown around the world, as effectively as possible? So I think the world population is continuing to grow, billions by billions. Yeah. So we are going to need, as a world, to work out how we effectively produce more, but without despoiling the planet. We only have one planet. We've only got, we can't reinvent another planet. Yeah. So we have to do it in a sustainable way. And I think these are the challenges, and going to be growingly the challenges for food production.
Oh, thank you so much. I heard that 60% of the food that is grown is wasted.
Yeah, which is
how to solve it? You have so much experience.
Well,
how to do it half at least?
Yes,
30% instead of 60.
Yeah,
that will save millions of people.
No, I mean, I think it actually requires improvement in storage, and we the United Kingdom have been doing a lot of work in collaboration with African governments and African countries as to how they improve storage. It's in parts of Asia, it's done a lot better, actually, in China and Malaysia and so on. So it is possible to be done. We have just got to make sure that the standards of the best of the world can be applied as far as possible in other parts of the world. And I mean, at the moment, the figures you quote are tragic figures for the waste of food in large parts of Africa and some parts of South America, and we have to improve on that.
Oh, great. Could you please share your experience in regards to waste recycling? How UK is doing now with waste recycling? Let's say plastics, tires, food waste, electronics waste. Any ideas for Ukraine?
So the way I look upon that is this. It's very simple. So I was for a while Minister of the Environment with responsibility for waste recycling and so forth. Now if you think about it, you just take a city like Kiev, just stand back and think, where does all the waste go? And traditionally...
To the landfills.
Yeah, exactly. No, traditionally it goes and has gone into very large holes by way of landfill. But landfill, is taking up large amounts of land. It's very difficult. It produces waste gases like methane, which don't help with climate change. And, we're running out of holes, okay? So you just cannot keep on. So the whole idea is, how do you stop waste going to landfill? So you need to have far better recycling targets, which is what we have been doing in the UK now for 30, 40 years, of trying to encourage people to separate their waste so that we can recycle more paper, we can recycle more plastics. But it's not just a question of separating waste and asking people to recycle it. You've also got to find markets for that waste product. So, with recycled plastics, you've got to find things that you can do with it. So you either create energy from waste or other products from waste, and that is also increasingly important, that one actually finds alternative uses for waste products.
Meaning that you suggest everyone to get some product out of waste that will improve.
And that is, you know, we have been seeing that in the UK, and you'll see a lot of products now which are made from recycled materials, and that is increasingly important, because unless you have those markets, it makes it difficult for there to be an incentive for local authorities and others to actually bother to recycle the waste and make sure it doesn't go to landfill.
Yeah, great. Tell me your thoughts about fossil fuels. I know everyone knows that you have a huge experience in the fossil fuel area. Definitely we all know that without fossil fuels, the humanity will not reach this level. But there should be probably an end point for this. Yeah. How do you see that?
And there is, and we're seeing that already in the UK. We will see the closure of our last coal-fired power stations in the next few years. So we will have no coal-fired electricity any longer.
From this year?
I think in 3 years' time.
Okay.
We are already seeing a considerable expansion of wind power.
Okay.
I personally am chairing a UK-US joint venture which is going to build huge wind turbines off the coast of Iceland, lay cable to the UK and Ireland, generate wind power off Iceland and move the electricity by cable, plug it into the grid. Wind power around Iceland works 70% of the time. So there are wind turbines out at sea. We can generate more electricity than is needed from the coal-fired power stations that are coming offline. And if you set targets for reducing fossil fuels, and then there is an incentive for the marketplace, for investors, for financial institutions to come in and invest in projects like my project off Iceland, Icewind, because they will see an incentive to do that. So I think we are going to see an increasing investment in renewable energy.
What about nuclear power?
The difficulty with nuclear power, the one thing that we haven't really cracked with nuclear power is how do you store nuclear waste? And that is, well, there are two problems with nuclear power. One is how do you store nuclear waste, and the second is the cost of decommissioning nuclear power stations. And so when people talk about nuclear power, they often talk about the cost of actually producing, an hour, a gigawatt of electricity. What they don't take into account in that calculation is at the end of the process, you are going to have to decommission that nuclear power station, and that is very, very expensive. So personally, I think we should be seeing, what more we can do in terms of renewable energy.
Okay, it's clear. When do you see the end of fossil fuels? Do you see it in foreseeable future?
Yes.
It's still growing, by the way.
I know. Well, because the world is going, the population is going. But you're seeing you're in the mainland Europe now. You're seeing increasingly people thinking about how do they develop electric cars, electric trucks. They're innovating about how do you develop batteries that can store electricity for longer. So how can I think that is going to happen increasingly faster, and I'm sure this G7 that is taking place at the present moment in the United Kingdom, the heads of the G7 are going to commit to ever increasingly tighter targets of when do they meet climate change targets, whether it's 2050, 2030, and so on. So there's going to be relentless pressure on the developing world and on the developed world to meet ever tighter climate change targets, which will involve reducing fossil fuels.
Oh, got you.
And you see companies like BP now moving away from investing in oil production to investing in renewables production.
Many oil companies do that.
Exactly, and I think you're going to see that being done ever more, yeah.
Tell me please, in 2021, Westminster Group wins some prestigious awards for international trade.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that, please.
So one of the things I do is I chair a public company, a company which is quoted on the London Stock Exchange called the Westminster Group, PLC. And we do port and airport security around the world. So we operate in a whole number of different countries. I think we're one of the few British companies which does business in both Saudi Arabia and Iran. We have an office in Saudi Arabia. We also won a contract when President Obama lifted sanctions to do work on security for Tehran International Airport, which we weren't able to take forward because the sanctions that President Trump imposed, but if those sanctions are lifted, we may well go back to that. And so we heard the UK government, who advised the Queen, said, well, this company has done so well that we were given the Queen's Award for exports.
Oh.
So that enables us on our note paper and on everything we do to have a very nice logo with a crown and an E underneath it. And it's a kite mark of some sort of achievement that we've had. So now the effort is, of course, we have to work doubly hard to make sure that we, don't let people down. And so, but the last place I traveled to just a little while ago was the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where we're doing business. And so we go to all sorts of different parts of the world, doing business. The UK is an island. It's quite a small island. To survive, we have to be global traders.
Like you always were.
Yeah, exactly.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
There is an information that UK is going to remove all the legal restrictions on social contacts.
Yeah.
Do you think it can happen? And all these masks and things will be removed, or it just impossible hope?
Well, we're in a sort of race at the moment between vaccines and the variants on COVID.
Yeah.
We've had an incredibly successful vaccine program in the UK. Most people now aged over 30 have had their first dose. Most people aged over 50 have had 2 doses, so double protection. But there has been concern about what is known as the Indian variant.
Or African.
Well, I think it's this so-called Indian variant, which appears to be more transmissible and
absolutely immune to vaccine.
Well, not immune, but seems to have
lower
resistance. Yeah. And so I think the concern is about, well, what might that lead to in terms of hospitalizations? What is certainly correct is that the number of people who have died is dropping considerably. So if you were asking me, my guess is that we will see the lifting of restrictions probably postponed for about a month. So instead of the end of June, at the end of July. However, there has to come a time when these restrictions are lifted, okay? Because there has to be a balance between combating COVID and allowing the economy to continue, okay? And so people are not prepared. They will not be willing to be locked down forever. So once the restrictions are lifted, they have to be lifted. And we're all of us going to have to learn to live with COVID as an endemic disease. It is always going to be there now in our lives. I suspect each year we're going to need to have booster vaccines, particularly for older population. But in the UK, every winter, most people over 65 already have a vaccine against flu. So having a vaccine each winter against COVID, which is a kind of, flu is kind of, a virus like that, will just become normal. And we will each year have to develop a vaccine which seems to be the most effective for dealing with the variants at the time. So I would hope that by the end of July, at the latest, the UK economy will be fully open again.
Okay, and the last thing, when the Great Britain will lift the restrictions for travelers? As the Ukrainians, we can come, but we have to stay on self-isolation, which makes these things impossible.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I can understand that, and it is incredibly frustrating having all these restrictions. Just coming here to Kiev, I actually have to take 5 COVID tests. So I have to take a test before I come to Ukraine, a test before I go back to the United Kingdom. When I get back to the United Kingdom, I have to take another test on day 2. day 5, day 8. Okay, that is 5 tests. And the cost of those 5 tests, now it's a business cost, but if you're taking, it means taking a family or anyone overseas now is getting really impossible. So the truthful answer to your question is I genuinely do not know when the restrictions for travel will be lifted. I think a lot will depend upon the COVID rates in different countries. I'm sure but I think we're again wanting to open up the world as quickly as possible. I think also what we will see, again coming from the G7, is a recognition that no one is safe until we're all safe. And so I would hope that next year, 2022, there'll be a major effort by the United Kingdom, the European Union, the United States, to ensure that the whole of the rest of the world is vaccinated, because only in that way are we all going to get proper protection.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And thank you for coming to Kiev.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Come again, and
Thank you.
please share more of your great ideas.
Thank you.